The phone rang at 1:47 a.m., sharp and sudden, in the quiet cab of the truck. Ethan Walker glanced at it, annoyed. Nobody called him at this hour. He drove freight across Nevada nights for a reason: less traffic, fewer people, fewer memories. The desert highway stretched endlessly ahead, pale under the moonlight, the engine humming like a heartbeat. The screen showed unknown. He let it ring once more, then answered. "Please don't hang up," a woman's voice said. She sounded cold, tired, afraid. "I'm stranded on Route 318. Ethan's eyes flicked to the roadside sign passing his windshield. Route 318, 4 miles. His stomach tightened. Who is this? "My car stopped," she said. "I've been here a long time. No signal." "You're the only one who answered." "That doesn't make sense," Ethan replied. "You shouldn't even be able to call." "I don't know how," she whispered. "I just know you're close." The call crackled with wind, like she was standing out in the open desert. Ethan eased off the gas without realizing it. He told himself it was nothing, just a coincidence. "Turn on your hazard lights," he said. "If you're really there, I'll see them." "They're already on," she replied. The call ended. 2 minutes later, Ethan saw the blinking lights ahead, uneven, lonely. Sitting on the shoulder like a warning meant just for him. No other cars, no buildings, just desert and silence. He pulled over slowly, his heart beating harder than it should have. He stepped out of the truck. The night air was cold, unnaturally still. "Hello," he called. No answer. The sedan's driver door was open. The interior light flickered weakly. Ethan approached cautiously, every instinct telling him something wasn't right. He leaned toward the hood and touched it. Cold. The engine hadn't been running recently. His phone buzzed in his hand. He checked the call log. Nothing. No record of the call at all. "Hello?" he said again. Movement inside the car made him freeze. A woman slowly sat up in the back seat. She looked to be in her mid-20s, pale, eyes wide but alert, like she had been waiting. "You came?" she said softly. "You called me?" Ethan replied. She shook her head. "I didn't call anyone. I don't have service." A chill ran through him. "What's your name?" "Lena." The name hit him like a punch. Lena was his sister's name. She had died 12 years ago on a desert highway at night. A story Ethan never told. A memory he never stopped running from. "That's not funny," he said sharply. Her face tightened, confused. Why would it be? The wind picked up, rattling the open door. Ethan glanced toward the road behind him, empty. No headlights. No sound, not even insects. "What happened to your car?" he asked. "It just stopped," Lena said, "like everything does on this road." She stepped out slowly. She wore a thin jacket, wrong for the cold. No phone in her hands, no bag, nothing. "Why did you take this route?" she asked. "I didn't choose it," Ethan replied. "It's just my job." "That's what you told yourself before," she said quietly. His chest tightened. "Before what?" Lena looked past him, down the highway. For a brief second, the road shimmered like heat rising off asphalt, then returned to normal. "You should leave," Ethan said. "I'll call for help once I get signal." "You won't," she replied. "I stopped, didn't I?" he snapped. Isn't that enough? Her eyes softened, filled with something like sadness. You stopped too late last time. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Lena's face went pale. Don't answer that. Why? Because last time you did? You kept driving. Against every instinct, Ethan answered. He heard his own voice on the line. Tired, it said. Someone else will stop. Ethan staggered back, breath leaving his lungs. This road doesn't punish people, Lena said quietly. It brings them back to what they ran from. The hazard lights on the sedan suddenly went dark. The desert fell silent. Lena pointed down the highway, where the darkness seemed thicker than before. You're going back, she said, to the moment you chose not to stop. Ethan looked at his truck, then at her, then at the endless road ahead. And for the first time in years, he felt the past waiting for him. Thanks for listening. Ethan stood frozen on the shoulder of Route 318, the endless desert stretching out on all sides. The night felt heavier now, like it had a physical weight. Lena's finger was still pointed toward the dark highway ahead, the road that seemed to breathe quietly, waiting. I don't understand, Ethan said, his voice low. You're saying this already happened? Lena lowered her hand. I'm saying you've been here before, just not like this. Ethan shook his head and turned back toward his truck. He needed distance, something solid to ground him. As he opened the door and climbed inside, the cab felt colder than before. He shut the door, breathing hard, then looked up. Lena was sitting in the passenger seat. He flinched, slamming his foot on the brake even though the truck wasn't moving. How did you? You don't need to ask that anymore, she said calmly. This road doesn't follow rules. It follows people. Ethan stared straight ahead. The headlights illuminated the empty asphalt, stretching far beyond where it should have ended. The desert on either side looked flatter, darker, like a painted backdrop. This isn't real, he muttered to himself. It feels real, Lena replied, and that's enough. Without him touching the key, the engine rumbled to life. Ethan felt his chest tighten, a knot of pure panic forming in his stomach. I didn't start it. I know, Lena said, her voice unshaken. The truck rolled forward on its own, slow at first, then steady. Ethan's hands hovered nervously near the wheel before he gripped it tightly, as if that would give him some semblance of control. Rain began to fall, light drops tapping against the windshield, growing heavier with every passing second. Ethan recognized the sound immediately, that had echoed in his subconscious for years. I've heard this in my dreams, he said, his voice barely a whisper. You never stopped hearing it, Lena answered. The rain blurred the road ahead, turning the world into a wash of distorted light. Reflections from the headlights twisted across the wet pavement, pulling long-buried memories out of hiding. Ethan swallowed hard. I didn't know how bad it was, he said, the words catching in his throat. I saw the lights. I slowed down. But you didn't stop, Lena said gently, her words piercing through his defenses. I was scared, Ethan snapped, the old fear rising up in him. It was dark. I was tired. I told myself someone else would help. The truck rounded a familiar curve. Ahead, hazard lights blinked, weak and uneven against the torrential downpour. Ethan's heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against his ribs. This is it. Yes, Lena said, her voice soft but certain. This is where you decided? The truck slowed as Ethan instinctively eased off the gas. His hands shook, but he didn't pull away this time. The scene sharpened into focus, the damaged car on the shoulder. The driver's door hanging open, a shape inside barely moving. I kept driving, Ethan whispered, the confession hanging heavy in the air. Every mile after that felt heavier. And yet you never turned back, Lena replied, not with judgment, but with a quiet finality. The rain intensified, pounding against the roof like a drumbeat of accusation. For the first time, the silence didn't feel threatening, it felt expectant. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped out into the rain. It soaked him instantly, cold and sharp, washing away the years of dust and denial. He walked toward the car, every step heavy but deliberate. Inside, a young woman sat slumped against the seat, injured but alive. For the first time, the silence didn't feel threatening, it felt expectant. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped out into the rain. It soaked him instantly, cold and sharp, washing away the years of dust and denial. He walked toward the car, every step heavy but deliberate. Inside, a young woman sat slumped against the seat, injured. Inside, a young woman sat slumped against the seat, injured but alive. Her eyes lifted when she saw him, a flicker of disbelief in their depths. You came back? She whispered. Knelt beside the open door, the rain dripping from his hair. I'm here now, he said, his voice steady. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. He stayed. He spoke calmly, reassuringly. He called for help. As her eyes lifted when she saw him, a flicker of disbelief in their depths. You came back? She whispered. Ethan knelt beside the open door, the rain dripping from his hair. I'm here now, he said, his voice steady. I'm not leaving. He stayed. He spoke calmly, reassuringly. He called for help. As distant sirens cut through the night, growing louder and closer, the rain began to soften. She stood a few steps away, watching him with a faint, knowing smile. It doesn't erase what happened, Ethan said quietly. No, she replied. But it changed. It doesn't erase what happened, Ethan said quietly. No, she replied. But it changes what follows you. The rain stopped completely. The emergency lights faded, and the road began to blur, colors bleeding softly into a gentle gray. Is this goodbye? Ethan asked. Lena nodded. You don't need me anymore? The world shifted. Ethan was back in his truck, parked safely on the shoulder of the highway. Dawn was spreading across the horizon, pale orange light breaking through the last remnants of the dark. The highway looked normal now, just road, desert, and distance. The passenger seat was empty. Ethan started the engine and began driving as the sun rose. And for the first time in years, the road ahead didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like it was finally letting him go. The sky was just starting to fade from black to gray as Ethan drove on. Dawn crept slowly across the desert, washing the highway in a soft, honest light. The long night was finally over, but its weight, its lessons, still clung to him. His hands rested calmly on the steering wheel, but inside, his mind was a storm, louder than the roar of the engine. For the first time in years, he hadn't run. All his life, Ethan had believed that leaving was the only way to survive. When things got complicated, when people started to need him, when the consequences of his actions began to appear on the horizon, he would simply disappear. He always told himself it didn't make him a bad man, it just made him a survivor. But somewhere on that endless road, during that long, dark night, he had finally understood something deeply uncomfortable. Not being a bad person was not the same thing as being a good one. There was a vast, empty space in between, and he had been living in it for far too long. Up ahead, a small roadside diner appeared, its neon sign buzzing weakly against the brightening sky. Ethan pulled over, the gravel crunching under his tires. Inside, the comforting smell of fresh coffee and old vinyl seats wrapped around him like a warm blanket. He chose a booth by the window, watching the empty highway stretch out into the distance. For the first time, it didn't look threatening. It didn't look like an escape route. It just looked patient. As if it had been waiting for him to finally see it clearly. A folded local newspaper sat on the counter, left behind by a previous customer. The headline caught his eye, even from a distance. Mysterious Good Samaritan saves woman after highway crash. Ethan felt a knot in his stomach, but it wasn't fear. It was something else, something new. He didn't pick up the paper. He didn't need to read the details. He already knew the story because he had lived it. He had been the one to see the wreck, to pull over, to make the call that saved a life. He had been the one who stayed. When he stepped back outside, the desert felt different. It was still quiet, still vast and wide, but it was no longer empty. It felt full of possibility. He got back into his car and continued driving, the road unfolding before him without resistance, without the usual whispers of escape. An hour later, his phone rang, vibrating against the passenger seat. An unknown number. Ethan's first instinct, the old, familiar one, was to ignore it. Let it go to voicemail. Let it become someone else's problem. But he hesitated, his hand hovering over the screen. Then, he answered. "Hello? Is this Ethan Cole?" a woman asked. For the first time in his memory, his chest felt light. He didn't feel proud. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt honest. He felt real. The heavy armor he'd worn for years had finally cracked. The road ahead curved toward a scenic canyon overlook. On any other day, he would have driven right past it, focused only on the destination. For the first time in his memory, his chest felt light. He didn't feel proud. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt honest. He felt real. The heavy armor he'd worn for years had finally cracked. The road ahead curved toward a scenic canyon overlook. On any other day, he would have driven right past it, focused only on the destination. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt honest. He felt real. The heavy armor he'd worn for years had finally cracked. The road ahead curved toward a scenic canyon overlook. On any other day, he would have driven right past it, focused only on the destination. But today, without thinking, he turned off the main road and followed the smaller one. He parked and walked to the edge, watching the sun finally break over the horizon, painting the endless stone and shadows in brilliant gold and orange. The world felt enormous, but not overwhelming. For the first time, he felt like he was a part of it, not just a ghost passing through. He heard the soft crunch of footsteps on the gravel behind him. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. "You finally chose differently," Lena's voice said, as clear as if she were standing right beside him. Ethan managed a small, soft smile. "I didn't know I could." "The road always gives you chances, Ethan," she replied. Her voice was the one he heard in his loneliest moments, the voice of the biggest regret he ever ran from. "You just weren't ready to take them before. And now?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper against the wind. "Now you are," she said. "You don't have to run anymore." He turned to face her, to finally look at her, to apologize for everything. But she was gone. Only the wind remained, sweeping through the canyon like a quiet, final goodbye. He wasn't haunted anymore. He was forgiven. Ethan returned to his car and drove toward the city, toward a life he hadn't figured out yet. The highway was just a highway now. No more whispers, no more shadows. Just asphalt and sky. Weeks later, Ethan's life looked different. He found a small apartment, a steady job. But his routine had a new addition. He signed up as a volunteer for a roadside assistance service. He took the late-night shifts, the ones on the empty highways where cars were few and far between. He became the person who stopped when others passed by. He was the one who stayed when it mattered most. Sometimes, the people he helped would ask him why he did it. Why spend his nights on these lonely stretches of road, helping strangers? Ethan never gave a long, complicated answer. He'd just smile and say it's the right thing to do. Because he had finally understood that redemption doesn't come from erasing the past or pretending it never happened. You can't outrun your own shadow,